Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It is that time of the year. It's that time of the year when it seems like on a once-a-year rhythm, I realize that the people of the world need to be reminded about the facts of which they have forgotten. So I need to review, and let's do that today. So let's see what we're going to review. I posted just now the link to the source material if you want to save your eyes from squinting at this particular screen. To try to read the text, I try to make it big, but you can get it up on your own browser. And there's also more information on that page than what we'll cover today. What we'll cover together today, and I invite you and request you to ask your questions about this stuff. That's why it's a live stream. We will cover 3 important essential texts: Surya Siddhanta, Bhagavad Purana, and Parashara, Hora, Shastra. And off the bat, some of you will say, who cares about texts? Well, I care about texts. You know why I care about texts? Well, why do you not care about texts? Because you think people are geniuses and everybody can invent their own shit as it goes. Well, yes, I agree. And the people who are the most geniuses are the people that get remembered for the longest amount of time. That's why I care about classical texts. Also, because I believe that this acts as a natural filter on bullshit. This acts as a natural filter for knowledge. It filters out the stuff that shouldn't survive. It's survival of the fittest in the realm of knowledge. So we have to respect the classical texts from the classical astrologers. And ultimately, we call ourselves Vedic astrology. We have to respect the Vedic statements, which are delivered in the Samhitas and the Puranas. The Puranas are not Bibles. The Puranas are not religious books. We're not talking religion. The Puranas have 1 of 10 sections devoted to astronomy. So, it's really important what these texts say, especially if you claim to be a Vedic astrologer, because Vedic astrology means that you respect the Vedas. So let's take a look. Let's take a look first at Surya Siddhanta. What is Surya Siddhanta? Surya Siddhanta is the most respected textbook on astronomy in India. And when we talk about astronomy, we're talking about the thing that we use to create charts. So astronomy is a foundation for astrology. Astronomy and astrology are not the same exact thing, but astrology is based on astronomy. And it's based on a certain type of astronomy, which is called observational or geocentric astronomy. The most respected textbook upon which all other astronomical textbooks in the history of India have been based is this one. So let's see what this one has to say. But chakra nabhao vishuvat dvitiyam samasutragam ayanan dvitiyam chaiva chatasra pratitastuta. The 2 solstices. Oh, did I hear that word? Did you hear that word? The 2 solstices. And equinoxes. The 2 solstices and equinoxes are the thread. Actually, what it literally says is draw a line between the two solstices and the two equinoxes, and that's the anchor. That's the thread. That defines the nub or the core or the hub of the wheel of the sky. The zodiac is anchored to the solstices and the equinoxes. It just doesn't get more clear than this statement. It just doesn't get more explicit and more black and white. So what do people do? They just don't show up. They just don't listen to it. They just don't pay attention to it. And they hope that it goes away and that people stop talking about it. But unfortunately, there's a Capricorn involved in the equation. Yours truly. So Capricorns don't give up and they don't go away. They keep talking about it. And if you are not like, what the hell? Why is he so like, what's going on with this dude right now? He's freaking out. If you don't realize that this is the definition of a tropical zodiac, not a sidereal zodiac, then you just need your really basic astronomy. What is a tropical zodiac? What is a sidereal zodiac? A sidereal zodiac is a zodiac defined by a star. And a tropical zodiac is a zodiac defined by a solstice or an equinox. So Surya Siddhanta gives a tropical zodiac, and this is the only definition of the zodiac in the Surya Siddhanta. There's no competing definition of it somewhere else. If you're siderealist, come here, and if I'm wrong, tell me. Speak up. It's been since 2012 since you haven't spoken up. But speak up. If I'm wrong, I want to know. Speak up. And if you don't want to come into my channel and get bashed by my fans, etc., then I'll come to yours and you can bash me. Speak up. Let's have a dialogue about this instead of just wishing that it goes away. Because it is not going to go away. I promise. But Chakranabha Vishvatvatiyam Samasutragam Ayanam Dvitiyam Chaiva Chatasra Pratitastuta, the two solstices and the two equinoxes are the thread upon which the core of the zodiac exists. Then the ensuing information in Surya Siddhanta just explains how do you get a 12-fold zodiac out of 4 solstices and equinoxes, and what are they named. So it just explains tad antareshu sankranti dvitiyam puna. What you do is between each one of those, draw a cross, and then in between each point on the cross put 2 more points. Now you have 12. Those are the 12 zodiacs divisions. Those are the 12 divisions. And that's why there's 12 divisions. Why should we draw 12? It's because of the way that the lunar cycle intersects with the solar cycle. You'll have 12 lunar cycles in a solar cycle. And then it explains it takes the sun 6 months to reach the northern solstice after entering Capricorn. So it says that division that's down there on the bottom, where the sun comes down to the southern solstice, that's called Capricorn, Makara. And from there, the sun starts to go north. And it takes 6 months for it to get up to the highest north that it can get. And then that division that starts right there, where the sun gets to the northern solstice, that's called Karkata. That's called Cancer. And then it takes 6 months for it to get back to Capricorn. And thus, Meshadyo Dvadashaite Masastair Eva Vatsara. The 12 divisions beginning from Aries are certainly the months which constitute a year. If I truly believe in my school of thought, why do you need someone? I don't need somebody. I don't need anybody. But I give up a damn. And I live in a universe with other people in it. So my interaction with other people is important to me. And I give a damn about other people. And it bothers me. And I hope that an important science, such as astrology, can be rescued from the depths of mud into which it has fallen because of the refusal to be logical and deal in an adult manner with opposing ideas in a scientific, rational, systematic way. Oh my God. Joe, I don't know how much money that is, but it looks like a lot. Thank you, Juniper. I don't need validation. Do you think Jesus Christ needed validation, or Muhammad the prophet, or whoever it is that you look up to needed validation? I'm not saying that I'm like them, but I'm saying, do you think that a person who preaches and presents their attitude is it flawed? They must need validation. They don't really believe it in themselves. Rational and scientific is not a fallacy. Rational is a way of thinking about. It's a discipline of thought. And that's what I'm asking you to do, is to have discipline of thought and think about the actual material. Okay. Everything is very subjective, she says. That's why you need to make an effort to be rational. It doesn't happen naturally. That's why you have to make an effort. Any question about what the Surya Siddhanta just said? The two solstices and the two equinoxes are the thread upon which the core of the zodiac exists. Is there any question about that? So if somebody says the zodiac is based on Chitra Yogatara, is that the same as what the Surya Siddhanta just said to you in black and white? No, it's not. If somebody says that the zodiac is the same as the constellation called Libra, is that what Surya Siddhanta just said? No. So Surya Siddhanta said the zodiac is based on the equinoxes and solstices. And it says this is Pratitastuta, this is well known, because everybody knows this. Mulapin did it this way, Tetrabiblios did it this way, and apparently even in India when the Surya Siddhanta was current, everybody was aware of this stuff. Haris Khan, go to this page later, victorcara.com/tropical, and look at the this one. Go to the history of the zodiac, the UAC 218 presentation. Okay? And that's going to explain what is the relationship between constellations and the zodiac. And all this information on this whole page you can use to further refine your understanding. Here's all my crazy videos. And we'll come back to where we were before. Good? You clear on Surya Siddhanta? Now, besides Surya Siddhanta, we have the Puranas. As I said, people will just say, oh, the Purana, I'm not into religion, or this is not a religious discussion. The Puranas are not religion. And how can you call yourself a Vedic astrologer if you don't even know that? And if you're not into religion, blah, 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 why do you call yourself a Vedic astrologer? If you're going to throw around the word religion so easily. Somebody can just throw around that word right back at you. And say the Vedas are religious books. Why are you Vedic? If you're Vedic person, or if you're anybody who cares about established knowledge and knowledge that has survived, the survival of the fittest of knowledge, then you should care what the Puranas have to say about what the zodiac is. Because what you didn't know when you listened to people who just told you the Puranas are like the Bible, they're not like the Bible. The Bible is nothing like any of the Vedas. The Puranas are textbooks of knowledge. And that is what the word Veda means. And the Puranas have 10 subjects, one of which is sthiti, or the composition of the cosmos, aka astronomy. So these 1/10 of the content of the Purana is astronomy. It's meant to teach astronomy, and it doesn't teach heliocentric astrology or any other kind of impractical astronomy. It teaches observational geocentric astronomy. So let's see. And what we're going to find here in Bhagavad Purana, which is the best Purana, the most carefully maintained over the years, the ones that the other ones point to as being this is the epic, we'll find in this Purana, we'll also find anywhere any other Purana gives any definition of the zodiac. They just have the same definition. So you'll find this also in Vishnu Purana, Padma Purana. I said, Ronaldo, that it's that time of the year. It's that time of the year when I realized that we need to go over this again. Because you're just sitting there watching me freak out, but you have no idea of all the emails I'm getting and all the comments that I'm answering and how they pile up and escalate over the months till I realize it's time to just put this all in one nutshell and handle it on a live stream. Sa esha udgayana dakshinayana vishvata sangyabir mandya sagra samanadbir gatibir. The sun moves at varying speed between the northern solstice, the southern solstice, and the equinoctial points. There are those words again. Solstice, equinox. I bet you didn't even know that there was a Sanskrit word for equinox and solstice. Arohana avarohana samana sthaneshu yatasavana abhipadyamano. Its rise towards the northern solstice and its fall towards the southern solstice and its crossing the midpoint can be known by measuring the days. So if we say that the zodiac is based on the equinoxes and the solstices, which is what the Surya Siddhanta just said, then how do you know where anything is? This is an important point, and this answers Hari Khan's question about what the hell are the constellations then. This is in reference to that. How do you know where anything is? I don't see a solstice in the sky. I don't see an equinox in the sky. It's not Jyotibimba. It's not a point of light. So how do I know? But the zodiac is divisions of the sky, but it's based on the solstices and equinoxes. Where are they? So this is explaining the way that you can know where the solstice and where the equinox is by savanam, yata savanam abhipadyamana. You measure the length of the day. That's why, I remember this. When I was in school, they were still teaching us that people in the ancient days, they used stuff like sundials. And all these great ancient mathematicians, they used stuff like poles and sticks in the ground to measure shadows. You know what all that stuff is? That's how you measure the length of the day. That's how you measure the amount of sunlight versus the amount of dark. That's what the Rashi is all about. That's what the zodiac is all about. To get to the real point. The Rashi is the collection of Rashmi, of brightness, of how much sun there is. Now, you say, you don't know anything of the crunch says, but the sidereal birth chart for me does not ring true. That doesn't matter. That just means you don't know how to read a chart, or that somebody doesn't know how to read your chart. I have people do this all the time. All the time. People will say, for example, like yesterday, somebody said, the sidereal zodiac isn't accurate for me because it shows my moon in Leo. But I'm a very Cancer person. In fact, the sidereal zodiac has my moon rising on my ascendant in Cancer, and that's so accurate. And I was really happy actually because somebody besides me said, that's You're a very moony. It's easy to mistake these things. Astrology is complicated. It's sophisticated. It's not complicated. Astrology is sophisticated. It's easy to mistake. You can't just say, it doesn't ring true to me because of one thing that I heard about something. This person has the moon right on their ascendant. Of course, they are going to be a Cancer-y type of a person. What is Cancer? It's the moon-ruled water sign. So just saying, but I like sidereal better. It's fine if that's all that you care about. And if it's just a coffee table conversation to you. But if you think that astrology is something significant, something important, something real, an actual science or discipline, which should be treated with intellectual respect, then those kind of arguments don't belong. Ronaldo, well, you already put it in one shell. Can you just put a text link to a blog in every video? No, you can't, because people need new things. And for you, you think you've already heard this before, but all these people haven't. And people need new things. The algorithm of the universe works on new. So if you just let it sit, that's what people want, Ronaldo. They want it to collect dust on a back shelf so that they can move on with their life and keep doing their thing. But that's not what we want. We want the information to keep coming up. Yeah, your moon is in the 6th house. It's a good, Elizabeth. I like that I'm seeing more and more people interacting in my channel who are getting the hang of how to think astrologically. I'm really happy about that. So here Bhagavad Purana is explaining how do you measure where the solstices are, where the equinoxes are. You do it by measuring the length of the day. The days and nights grow longer and shorter, revealing which of the signs, Capricorn, etc., the sun is in. Makaradi shu rashi shu ahoratrani dirghashva samanani vidhatte. So that's how you know what sign something is in. You know where the sun is based on how long the day is at your location. If it's the longest day at your location, then you know that the sun has reached Cancer. And if something is 12 degrees away from the sun, then you know it's 12 degrees away from Cancer. That's how you do the measurements. See, Red just said, I was on the fence. I was on the fence in which system was correct until I found this channel. Most of the sidereal channels say they are right, but you say, I'm right. This is the evidence. Okay, yes. I don't say I'm right. I don't give a damn about me. This is the difference between, I don't know. I don't care about me, or at least I don't really want to. I care about this stuff that I'm reading to you. I didn't write this stuff. This is ancient stuff that really, truly great thinkers have worked out and figured out. This was the system that was created by the forebears. And my role in this whole scenario is just to point to it. It's not that I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm saying this is the stuff that's important. Am I wrong? I'm inviting you to come over here and explain to me how I'm wrong. Just because you feel like you're a Leo doesn't mean diddly. That's not going to convince me of anything. I apologize. But if you can actually enter into a intelligent dialogue about these texts and what they mean, or maybe some other parts that I haven't seen, maybe some context that I'm not aware of, that would be great. But it's been more than 10 years, folks. I've been doing it for more than 10 years and this hasn't happened. This is the argument, what I'm presenting to you here. And it doesn't matter what you relate to. Honestly speaking, you'll relate to anything that is explained to you well. Please, you would relate to anything that is explained well. And that is explained in a useful and helpful way. It can be tea leaves. It can be a dream I had. What to speak of a sidereal zodiac? Of course. Of course it can be helpful and useful and it can work. But what we're talking about is, can we resurrect astrology from the frickin' disgrace that it has become? Pull it out of the mud and restore it to the position that it had at the top of the mother of all sciences. Not if we refuse to act like intelligent people and have intelligent dialogue and sort out what is actually an important argument versus what it's not. So let's move on. People won't listen to me, but that's because that's my karma and your karma too. Now let's look at this. The actual reason why I wound up doing this today is because I got an email about this particular one, Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra. And so I kind of updated my text on it. So I thought I would want to not just let that sit on a shelf and nobody know that I just updated this. So I decided to have this live stream. So after being presented with the above unequivocal and explicit tropical definitions of the zodiacs, are there any siderealists here who have a counterpoint? I would love to see that. I don't really care if the tropical resonates better or sidereal. Besides that point, is there anybody? After being presented with, no, there's not really, is there? And as I said, I don't blame them for not wanting to maybe come here and get bashed or something, but you could invite me to your place. I will welcome being bashed by your fans. After being presented with the above unequivocal and explicit tropical definitions of the zodiac, siderealists struggle to counter it with any sidereal definition from classical texts. So you say, here's the Surya Siddhanta. It definitely gives a tropical definition of the zodiac. Here's the Puranas. They definitely give a tropical definition of the zodiac. Question, is there another definition anywhere in the Vedic texts which is sidereal? Answer, ... No answer. Some have struggled to answer. Some have struggled to answer by saying, look, here it says that Ashwini starts with Aries. Some have struggled to answer in that way. But that's not a definition of the zodiac. That's an observation of what nakshatra relates to what Rashi. Especially when it's in the next chapter or the same book that just gave a tropical definition of the zodiac. Do you understand? If I tell you the zodiac is based on the equinoxes, so Aries is going to be defined by the equinox, and then I say Ashwini, which is a star constellation, is at Aries. Do you have any problem with that? Did I counteract my definition of the zodiac? Did I change? No, I told you that the zodiac, the Aries is defined by the equinox, and what is it? Ashwini starts with Aries. What have I done? I've told you that Ashwini is with Aries because I was talking to you 1800 years ago when Ashwini was with Aries. That's why you find these statements in books from 1800 years ago. And when you go to books from 3000 years ago, you hear about Kritika being the first one. And when you go to books from 16 centuries, so like 400 or 500 years ago, and you look at us authors like Varahamihira, you hear them raising these questions like, how come we're not moving the Rashis when the solstices and the equinoxes are changing their nakshatras? How do you reconcile the sign differences? You don't. You don't. As I just said, anything that is explained to you with a good heart and with some intelligence and with some compassion will be helpful for you, and will seem right to you. That's how you explain how can a sidereal reading be okay. And astrology is sophisticated and complicated. I went over this in 2012. So just go to this page, right, which is victorcara.com/tropical, and then just click over here, right, and then click on my original video transcription 2012, this one, and read that. That will explain that. Like how can it be any good? A sidereal, of course it can be good, bro. I can go to a crystal ball reader and get good stuff out of that. If the person is good, I can listen to music and get something good out of it. But now let's talk about astrology as a science. To make it systematically more good and consistently good. So that it could become very good. For everyone, not just the believers. That will require us actually sorting out our definitions and techniques. So Yasmin says you rely on books and pick and choose which extracts that hold weight to prove your... No, I don't. I've been asking you for 12 years. I read them all. But I know you don't believe that. So I'm telling you, I'm asking you, you come here, come into my stream and show me the part that I'm leaving out. What statement am I leaving out? Here's a tropical definition of the Zodiac and Surya Siddhanta. Here is a tropical definition of the Zodiac from the Puranas. Am I leaving something out? Is there something somewhere else? Show me. Don't say there must be. Show it. Find it. Because I looked and I didn't find it. But maybe that's just because I didn't look in the right spot. So you show me. I've been asking you to do that for 10 years. Like literally, I've had an open challenge out for people to show me this. Where is the sidereal definition? There isn't one. That is that thing, actually. I'm not picking and choosing. I don't care what resonates. So, after being presented, so one thing, however, that people have said when in response to this request, show me a sidereal definition of the Zodiac. One thing that what people say is look at Parashara Hora Shastra 3, chapter 3, right in the beginning, text 2, 3, 4, and 5. They think that is defining a sidereal Zodiac. That's been one of the responses. So let's look at this, okay? Let's begin by recognizing that this is not in a section about the Zodiac, so it's probably not intended as a definition of the Zodiac. It's a quick introduction to a chapter that is about the basic symbolic characteristics of the planets. However, whatever. Let's look at what it actually says and see what it actually says. So here's what it says in Brihad Parashara 3:2. Shrinu Vipra Pravakshami bhagrahanam paristitam. Listen, scholar. Scholar, Vipra, that's the people that are supposed to be astrologers. Listen, scholar, I will explain all about the stars and the planets. Akashe yani drishyante jyotirbimbanyanekasha. Look up at the sky. You see all the dots? You see all the lights up there? Jyoti bimba. The little dots of light. See it? Anekasha, there's so many of them. Teshu. Nakshatra sangyani. Graha sangyani kanichit. All of those dots of light, some of those guys are called nakshatra, and some of the other ones are called graha. Some of them are stars, nakshatra, and others are planets, graha. Now, let's pause right here for a second. Let me see this. Sunset. She said you were misinterpreting because you aren't native and Sanskrit is a very sophisticated language. Okay. Maybe. So that's just a slander unless you can actually correct me. I've studied Sanskrit since 1989, but that's okay. You don't have to believe me. If I am mistranslating the Sanskrit, then show and prove the correct translation. Otherwise, don't be slanderous and racist and say that because I'm not Indian, I must be wrong. No, sidereal is not another name for the Vedic system. Heidi, we should always pay attention to Heidi's comments because she always has something good to say. Isn't the psychology of individual and emotional connection people have to tradition the main block? Yes, that is the actual fact. The actual fact of the matter is that people just don't like being wrong. And people don't like having to change or back up. And they especially just don't like being wrong. That's the real problem. That's why people don't want to just look at what I'm saying. It's not just what I'm saying, what I'm pointing to in the Shastra. So now look what he said here. Shrinu Vipra. Shrinu! Listen. Pravakshami, I'm going to say something. Bhakrahanam paristitam. I'm going to explain everything about the planets and the stars. Akashayani drishanti jyotibimba nekshana. You look up at the sky, you see tons of dots of light. Right? Teshu nakshan samgyani graha sangyani kanichit. Amongst all of those dots of light, some of them are nakshatra. Some of them are graha. So what I want you to notice is he didn't say Rashi. He didn't mention Rashi. Rashi are not mentioned here. What does that mean? This establishes that the author does not consider them to be dots of light in the sky, stars. Hence, it is already evident that the author does not intend to define the zodiac as a stellar or sidereal entity. He said, look up at the sky. You see all those dots? Some of them are nakshatras. Some of them are planets. None of them are signs. That's the point. You understand? Wow, that's auspicious. I have a strongly twitching right eye. That's an auspicious nimitta. Something good is going to come of this. Whoa, it won't stop. Tani nakshatra namanis tirasthanani yanivai. Star or nakshatra is the name for those. So how come some of them are called stars and some of them are called planets? Do this tonight. Look up at the sky and do it over every day for a week. Look up at the sky, you see lots of little pretty sparkling lights, and you'll notice that some of them are not always in the same exact spot. And that's why some of them are called nakshatra and some are called graha. Tani nakshatra namani sthirasthanani yaniva. Star or nakshatra is the name for those that stay. Star. Nakshatra doesn't kshatra change. Nakshatra is the name for those that stay fixed in their place. Gacchanto bhani grillanti satatam yetu te graha. But those that always move as if they had will or independence, grill, they are planets, grah. So that's what he's explaining so far. He says, look up at the sky. Some are stars, some are planets. The difference is the planets move on their own, the stars don't. But now he has to be... No, if your left eye twitches, it's a negative sign. If your right eye twitches, it's a positive sign. But chakrasya nagashvangsa ashvinyadi samavaha. The lights move as a unit, like a wheel turned by a horse. Its segments are known as the horsemen, etc., Ashvini. So now, this idea that the stars don't move, that might be confusing. If you look at this, if you actually try it, go out and look at the stars at night, and they do move, don't they? I don't always see the same ones. So they do move. So he's now explaining they move as chakra. They move as a unit. They do move. This line clarifies that the planets move independently, grillanti, but the stars move together, keeping the same distances from one another, exactly like the spokes in a wheel. But chakrasya nagashvi amsha. They're like amshas in a wheel. The whole wheel moves, but the spokes of the wheel stay fixed in relation to each other. This particular wheel has 27 spokes. The first one is named the horseman, Ashvini, and so on. Any questions? So far, it's not a sidereal definition of the zodiac. There's no zodiac mentioned at all so far, right? In fact, the lack of the zodiac being mentioned at all so far is important, because so far he's been talking about the stuff that you see in the sky. But now he says, Tad dvadasha vibhagas tu tulya meshadi sangyakaha. But something similar to that can be divided into 12, known as Aries and so on. Here's the point. This is the thing that made people say, hey, I think I found a sidereal definition of the zodiac. But how? So let's explain. A siderealist will assume that the translation should be that same wheel has 12 divisions, Aries and so on. Right? You translated it wrong. You don't know Sanskrit. So if that's my claim, then I better be able to prove it. So let's prove it. Why is this a wrong translation? That same wheel has 12 divisions, Aries and so on. That would mean, what would that mean? That would mean that wheel of the stars can also be divided into 12, Aries and so on. And that would seem to be a definition of a sidereal zodiac. Not really a definition of a sidereal zodiac, but it would show that this author had a sidereal concept of the zodiac. And since this book is important, that would be significant. So I'm saying that translation is wrong. Just like somebody just said, your translations, Vic, are wrong. And what did I say? That person, correct me how I'm wrong. So let me show you why this is wrong. This would have to ignore 4 important points. It would have to ignore the word tu. It would have to ignore the word tulya, and it would have to ignore the word vibhaga compared to amsha, and it would have to ignore the opening statement of the author. So those 4 explanations why that translation does not convey the meaning of the author. So I would appreciate it if you feel that I'm mistranslating, misrepresenting, etc., etc., etc. Take the trouble to do the same sort of thing for me. Point out the 4 flaws. Point out 2 flaws. Point out 1. Believe me, there's flaws. I'm sure. I'm making plenty. Let's see if they're important or not. So what is it about the word to? To means but. But in any language, that concept is always X, Y, Z, but A. It means A is different than X, Y, Z. It doesn't follow the same rules or have to do with the same thing. But, you might think that A has something to do with X, Y, Z, but it's different. That's how that whole concept of but is used in languages. To. To is always used to indicate something different from what was previously discussed. For example, a few lines ago, the author used this word to say, the stars and the planets are both points of light, but they're not identical because the planets move independently. You see that? He said that over here. Gachantu bani grilanti satatam ye tu te graha. All the dots in the sky, they're different. They're not all the same. The planets are different than the stars, even though they share something in common. So now when he does finally mention Rashi, he uses the word but in relation to tat. Tat means that space, that's moving, that the planets are moving through. That space that the planets are moving through, a different kind of space there. So what he's saying is the stars and the signs are not identical. This is so ridiculous. Astronomers use sidereal as the true primary place, but they actually don't. They don't. First of all, they don't. Right. First of all, they don't. They use a tropical zodiac system. Second of all, who cares if they do or don't? Because all they're trying to do is show you the position of a thing. And if I say that my hand is 3 inches from my right ear or 6 inches from my left ear, that's both fine. And that would both be accurate for what they intend to do. The sidereal zodiac is not a science at all. It's just a definition of a concept. And the way that it differs from a tropical zodiac is that sidereal zodiac says these divisions of the sky are based on a star, which is fine. But what star? The zodiac starts at Aries. Is there a star there? No. There's a star on the other side of the sky, so maybe it's based on that one? All right. What do the ancient texts say? They say that the zodiac is based on the equinoxes and solstices, but you don't want to hear that. And that's your misfortune. I'm not your enemy. I'm not your opponent. I'm trying to get you to accept something important and fortunate, to have the fortune of getting clear knowledge from your ancestors. Accept what they have given. Can I ask, when we watch a YouTube video of a Vedic sidereal astrologer, should we watch for it? You probably shouldn't. Because what happens is they will adjust and redefine their basics. They will adjust and redefine their basics so that their measurements make sense. So what you wind up doing is getting more and more off balance and more into confusion. For example, you will have people arguing with me that the chart of a great villain which had an exalted Saturn or an exalted Mars is more accurate. But that's less accurate. The basic definition of the basic techniques of astrology is that exaltation creates good dignity and good behavior. Or they'll start to say that the exalted planets are not really that exalted, or the debilitated planets are not really that debilitated. But yeah, because they're not really in those signs. Or they'll start to say all kinds of stuff. So the more that you watch people try to explain things in reference to a sidereal zodiac, the more you will lose the consistency and clarity and simplicity of your basic astrological techniques. This is why, if you've noticed, if you watch the YouTube videos, it's like trying to chase a dog, catching a bone. They keep running around and coming up with new techniques. Okay. So, this is the information. You need non-biased information. You be non-biased. You don't need non-biased information. Information is inherently non-biased. You need to be non-biased. That's what I'm saying. Be rational. Here is information. You digest it. It's up to you, boys and girls. Grow up. Get out of the diapers. Use your brains. Stop just listening and going on your feelings of what resonates. Get out of the diapers and use your brains and think. Here's the information. You process it in a non-biased way. And tell me what you conclude. And if you try to do that in 10 seconds, I'm going to have to laugh. It should take you should have the respect and realism to know that this should take at least a day or a week of careful thought. If I made a mistake and my logic is wrong, let me know, please. So coming back to this, Siderealists will assume the translation should be that same wheel has 12 divisions, areas, and so on. However, this would have to ignore 4 important points. The first one is the word two. So hopefully you're clear about what that means. Hopefully you're even listening to me. I can't tell from the comments, to be honest. I can't tell from the comments. This is another clear way to differentiate an actual discussion from a meaningless argument. An actual discussion considers a point and stays focused on the point and examines the point and argues about the point. A meaningless argument just wanders all over the place, making assertions and defending against assertions. So it doesn't really seem like anybody is asking anything at all. You people let me down. You never ask anything about the actual material. You're not asking anything at all about Surya Siddhanta. You're not asking anything at all about the Puranic definition of the Zodiac. You're not asking anything at all about this text of Brihat Parahar Shastra. So I don't think you're even having a meaningful discussion. Or you respect the fact that it takes a long time to get a meaningful question. That is respectable. Unfortunately, the volume factor of irrationality tends to be loud. The word two is always used to indicate something different than what was previously described. For example, a few lines ago, the author used this word to say the stars and planets are both points of light, but they are not identical because planets move independently. Here he says the stars and signs are not identical. He says Dvadash Vibhagas 2. That means this Dvadash Vibhag is different from the chakra of nakshatras led by Ashwini. Because that's what the word two means. Then he also has the word tulya. Tulya means equivalent. The stars and the signs, or the nakshatras and the rashis, they're not identical, but they have similarity, or tulyata, because they're both unchanging, fixed things that move as a unit, and which the planets move independently through. So although the zodiac signs are different from the stars, the nakshatras, too, they're different from the nakshatras, but they have some similarity, tulyata. They have some similar. What is the similarity? The similarity is that both the planets move through this region. They move through both of these things, so in that sense they're similar. And the other similarity is they're both fixed in relation to each other, like the spokes of a wheel are fixed in relation to each other. Okay? Mari, I should then call and establish sidereal Vedic astrologers. I did that. In fact, I did that. I've been doing this for years and years. Where are they? Invite me to their spot. Because I already invited them and they refuse. One brave soul, one. Richard Fiddler. Look it up on my YouTube channel. I have a video of my discussion with Richard Fiddler. One brave soul decided to take up. In 10 years, another guy who I really shouldn't have given the honor of doing it, just because there were so few people too. I can't even remember this guy's name, but his arguments were really lousy. That's it. These other people, what is their response to me? Disown this person. That's their response to me. Disown, exile. Pato Banerjee. Very not good. I shouldn't have done that one with him. Anyway, I just don't think that he really deserved to be put on a level with Richard Fiddler. Anyway, do you have any questions at all about this actual subject? No, you still don't. Well, who cares about me? Why are you asking about what I've done? Why don't I do this? Am I that important? I mean, I think I'm pretty freaking important. But, at the end of the day, I'm not that important. It doesn't matter if I'm good, bad, right, wrong, whatever. What really matters is the Zodiac. So why don't you stop caring about the way I run my channel, the way I run my life, the way I do my things, and think about the actual information that I am presenting. Regardless of me and the mouth that the information is coming from, what about the actual information itself? Can you engage with this information? Can you please engage with this information? Please. And then the third thing which makes that an inaccurate translation is that the word vibhaga is used. The author describes the signs as vibhaga, differentiated divisions. In contrast, he describes the stars, nakshatras, amsha, or integral parts. This reinforces the concept that signs and stars are similar but not identical. I don't know. This is not really clear anymore because we keep getting interrupted. But so let's do it once and then I'll review it again. And then the fourth problem is the author's own opening statement. The author opened this section by saying that the planets and stars, not zodiac signs, can be seen in the sky. Since these 4 points cannot legitimately be ignored, it's disingenuous to claim that the author has or conveys a sidereal concept of the zodiac signs. I mean, if you know this, then it's disingenuous. If you don't know this, then you just didn't know your shit, which is okay. I don't know my shit either. We all don't, none of us know our shit. But let's get together and help each other get better at it and understand it. Not being disingenuous, that's the worst. Running away, not being genuine, that's what that word means. Running away, finding something, throwing some smoke bomb up in the air and trying to run away with it. So let's just, before closing up and before I address anything else in the stream of comments, and if anybody can present something that's actually on topic, it would really be nice. But let's just run through these three texts one more time. Surya Siddhanta said, the two solstices and the two equinoxes are the thread, are the anchor point on which the core of the zodiac exists. The zodiac is an entity based on solstices and equinoxes. There are two borders between each solstice and equinox, so you get 12. It takes the sun 6 months to reach the northern one after it enters Capricorn, the southernmost one. And then when it enters the northern one, it has entered Cancer. And then those famously named Aries and so forth, Mesha, Dio, those are the same, identical as the months. Though, you're not even paying attention to anybody, really. You're not even paying attention to the counter-arguments from the Siderealists. The counter-argument from the Siderealist is, this is a calendar. You could at least have said that. You could at least said, Vic, you're not talking about the zodiac, you're talking about a calendar. Mesha Dio Dvadasaste Mashaster Eva Vatsara. What he's saying is the year is the same as the zodiac circle, and the months of the year are the same as the divisions of the. So what he's saying is, hey dummy, what do you think a calendar is? Something you buy from Walmart? No, a calendar is the zodiac. The calendar is the zodiac. So saying that's not a calendar, that's not the zodiac, that's a calendar, just means that you don't know the relationship between a calendar and the zodiac. How would you know where the solstices are? By measuring the lengths of the day. How do you do that? You make a calendar. Yes, that is correct. This is a calendar. And guess what? The zodiac is a calendar in space. And guess what? That's why we can tell the future and the past by reading it. Because it's a calendar, because it's a time machine. So that is Surya Siddhanta. Bhagavad Purana said, the sun moves at varying speeds between the northern solstice, southern solstice, and equinoctial points. So the varying speed point. It's just that the sun doesn't actually have a perfectly consistent rate of movement. The sun moves between the northern solstice, southern solstice, and in between it crosses the two equinoxes. Right? It rises to the northern its rise to the north and its fall to the south, and it's crossing the midpoints. How do you know where it is? You make a calendar. You do it by measuring the days. That's what he says. Yata savanam. Savanam means a calendar. Yata savanam abhipadyamano. By measuring days. And how do you measure days? You measure what's longer, the daylight or the nighttime. Or you could even do it with shadows. What's longer, the darkness or the brightness? The days and nights grow longer and shorter, revealing which of the signs, Capricorn, etc., the sun is in. When the sun is in Aries and Libra, the days and nights are equal. So again, the Puranas have a concept and definition of the zodiac which is undivorceable from the equinoxes and solstices. When the sun is in the 5 signs starting from Taurus, the days grow longer and the nights grow shorter month by month. When the sun is in the 5 signs starting from Scorpio, the days and nights change in the opposite way. Bam. And then finally we covered Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra. And what did it say? It said, listen, scholar, I'm going to tell you about stars and planets. And he says, look up at the sky and you're going to see many dots of light. Some of those dots of light are called stars and some of those dots of light are called planets. None of those dots of lights are called zodiac signs. The ones that are called stars because they stay, they naksha, they don't move. And the ones that are called graha or planets are the ones that are like people, planets, people, the ones who have plans. They're called graha because they grilla, they have independence. They move on their own. Then he conveys that the stars also move, but they move as a unit. The lights move as a unit, like a wheel turned by a horse. Its segments are known as the horsemen, etc. Ashwini are like 27 spokes on this wheel. You can take that same wheel and you can divide it with 12 spokes, but it wouldn't be exactly the same wheel. It's tulya. Tadvadasha vibhagas tu tulya meshari sangyaka. But something similar to that can be divided into 12, known as Aries and so on. All right. So that is our recap. As I said, that time of the month, that time to get cranky again, the time of the year, it seems to have like a 1 year pulse to it. Since the last time I did this was 2021. Thank you, Maria. Dear Wolf, still would like to hear from Vic personally. Should we be using tropical Rashis and the sidereal nakshatras? Yes, you should. I thought that was clear. I'm in the southern hemisphere, can you not? And that has always intrigued me why north is up. Because north is up. Because the up and down is not relative to you, but it's relevant to the universe of the sun. Swarnimbosha. Nakshatra and signs are like two unchanging cycles overlaying each other a certain way right now. Yeah? Yes. Elsana that wants to see me talk to Joni. I haven't talked to Joni in years. Would like to. Why is the summer solstice, can you not ask, why is the summer solstice chosen to be the highest point? No, this is called the high solstice. And it's because it's the point that the sun is the most up from the solar ecliptic. I don't know. Is there anybody? Lynn, I was under the impression that sidereal was a lunar calendar and tropical is solar. Any truth to that? No, it's complicated. The solar calendar is based on the sun, and the lunar calendar is based on the moon. But the divisions of the solar calendar are made by the moon, and the divisions of the solar calendar are made by the sun. Divisions of the lunar calendar are made by the sun. So, in other words, the sun and the moon are always a couple, they're always a pair, and they don't get separated into two different calendars. If you take the sun as the primary point, then you'll make a solar calendar, or the zodiac. You'll make the zodiac. And what you'll do is you'll say, hey, the moon goes around 12 times. Well, the sun goes around once. So it will make 12 divisions. How far the sun moves every time the moon goes around once. So we'll come up with 12 divisions of one solar unit. So you have 12 months of a year or 12 signs in the zodiac, 12 divisions in the zodiac. If you, instead of taking the sun as the main point, if you take the moon as the main point, then you will wind up with a nakshatra calendar and the nakshatras themselves. So you'll wind up with the sun will define the divisions because the sun will go around the moon 27 times. The sun will go around 27 times when the time that it takes the moon to go through one of its cycles. Wait, how can that be? The moon goes 12 times in one of the sun cycles. How can the sun go 27 times in one of the moon cycle? Different kind of cycle. The sun's rotation versus the sun's revolution. Or the Earth's rotation versus the Earth's revolution. Speaking from a non-geocentric point. So if you're doing a lunar calendar or a nakshatra matrix, then you will divide the moon's orbit by the sunrises. So you'll get 27. And if you're doing a solar calendar or the zodiac signs, then you divide the sun's orbit by the moon's lunations. So you get 12. Now, neither of them are sidereal per se, but with the lunar calendar, when you're dealing with the moon, you can see stars at the same time. So the way that they went about naming the two divisions of a lunar calendar has to do with the stars that are visible at the full moon. And this is also the difference between sidereal and tropical, and why sidereal was used more in the ancient times. The sidereal zodiac was not used, but sidereal astrology was used. You don't have to use the zodiac to use astrology. I know that comes as a shock, but you don't. Just like you don't have to play Metallica when you have an electric guitar. I know that comes as a shock, but you don't. You can do astrology with stars. You can do astrology with 27 divisions of stars. You can do astrology with 33 or whatever you want to do. There's other ways of mapping out the area that the planets move through besides the 12 zodiacs. So in the ancient days, we're talking previous to 3,000 years ago, they very rarely did anything with the zodiac signs, because you can't see planets and the zodiac stars and the zodiac signs at the same time, because the zodiac is based on the sun's amount of sunlight, right? That's what he said, Savanava Bipadyamana. So it's difficult to know where Saturn is in relation to the sun. It's very possible. The way that you do it is you just know where the sun is by measuring how long the day is. And you say, okay, the sun is this far from the equinox. And then you measure Saturn is this far from the sun. How can you tell? How long is it? You can tell by saying, how much do I have to wait until Saturn rises after the sun has risen? Then you can tell the difference between the distance between Saturn and the sun by doing that. So then you can say, okay, then if I know how far the sun is from the equinox and I know how far Saturn is from the sun, then I know how far Saturn is from the equinox. So now I know where the Saturn is in the zodiac. But that's kind of complicated, especially compared to just walking outside and looking up with your eyes and seeing Saturn is next to Aldebaran. That's easy, you just do it. So in very, very old days when math was very slow and people hadn't worked out the most ideal equations and everything, they rarely did that. And they didn't have good instruments for measuring time. They didn't have good instruments for measuring distances. The sextants and all those kind of instruments that were later invented. They always had a theory of the 12 zodiac signs. That's why they always had a 12-fold calendar, all the way back past Mesopotamia. But they seldom used it as a zodiacal tool because they didn't have the capacity to. They didn't have the technological capacity to. So this is the long answer to Harish Khan's question from the beginning. They didn't have the capacity to. However, the capacity gradually developed. Human beings gradually, when they want to do something, they gradually figure out how to do it. So they gradually developed math that was more and more accurate. So they would start figuring out equations and inventing measurement tools that worked better. And it was around 2,500 years ago when it started to become reasonably accurate. And that's when there was an explosion. The astrological community changed dramatically, almost in a very short period of time, practically speaking, overnight. An explosion in the use of the zodiac signs as compared to the nakshatras, or what other culturally similar things to the nakshatras the various cultures of the world may have had. So when that happened, they would say, our measurements say that Saturn is at 48, that Saturn is at 18 degrees Pisces. Is it? How do we know? Our measurements say it. And with Saturn's no problem, really, because Saturn moves. But the real toughie is, where's the moon? Because the moon moves real fast. The moon's not so hard either because you can see it often. So, but like other planets, like fast planets, like where's Venus? Where's Mars? It would be a toughie. And that's the way that they kept refining their math to get it right. But they would say, we want to know, is this calculation correct? If it was the time of the year when you could see Mars clearly, then okay, but what if it wasn't? So they decided that they would measure points like the stars, and they would measure the amount of distance from the star to the equinox, so that even if something was out in the nighttime and it was hard to see where it was from the sun, you could measure it from the star. And this is concurrent with the point in history where they're using the zodiac. So this is where the concept of the zodiac that's in reference to stars takes birth. Because they say, well, the easiest star to use is, what's it called in the Western world? Chitra is called Spica. Spica. They say Spica. Spica is real nice because it's 180 degrees away from the equinox. So, and it, so if you see anything within 3, 4, 5 degrees of Spica, you know where it is. But then, after a few centuries of doing that, some people said, I don't know. And then Hipparchus was the first one to explicitly publish a statement that that's not reliable. That's not reliable because the distance between the star and the equinox is gradually changing. And then after Hipparchus, people had to decide, what would they do? Would they continue to use the reference stars? Or would they go back to working on their math and getting their math better? So there was a period of several decades or a century or two where there was some consternation. But 98% of the world, 98% of the world decided to, we defined the zodiac is defined as the equinoxes and solstices. So if the stars are moving, then we shouldn't rely on them. So at that point in history, 98% of the world realized that there's a difference between a tropical zodiac and a sidereal zodiac. At that point in history. And they decided, let's do the calculations required for a tropical zodiac. However, in India, that didn't happen. And why it didn't happen in India is just conjecture and speculation. But it's probably because India was indigenously had a very developed system of astrology on the nakshatras. And they liked how the nakshatras overlapped with the navamshas. And they didn't want to change it. The other thing is also Indians are very traditional. So once something starts going in a certain way, it's very difficult to get it to go a different way. Gee, you think? I wouldn't know about that at all. I encourage you to go to this page that's on the screen right now. There's a very interesting thing on here. In fact, since I have you all captive, let's read this together. Don't believe the newbie foreigners. A friend of mine actually, posted this about me. That I'm a newbie foreigner, so you shouldn't believe me. That's their response to the information. Even if you don't have the intellectual capacity, it's not an insult, but not everybody's an intellectual, just like not everybody's a painter. So if you don't have the intellectual capacity to sort out this information on your own, can you not see the quality of response from the sidereal crowd is not exactly inspirational? No, don't believe him, he's a newbie foreigner. So then I wrote this bit. Upon hearing someone say the sidereal zodiac is a mistake, the initial reflexive reaction from most users of the sidereal zodiac is, understandably, quite defensive. I remember in 2010, when I was using the sidereal zodiac, I think there's this woman named Vena or something. No, Vino, who was like somehow connected with Prashant Trivedi, who was kind of mentoring me a bit, and mentioned that Ernest Wilhelm is a real crackhead or a real weirdo. That guy is so retarded and ridiculous. He thinks that the zodiac is tropical. I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, what kind of a retard is that? Like, why would you think that? Yeah. But then when I read this paper, and I thought, there's some points in this. Let me research it further. So yeah, the initial response even in me is like, what? No. And even if it is, like, just get off my back. I'm doing it this way and it's working, and I have people already that, I'm going to have to like step down from my position of being right. So understandably, the initial reaction is defensive. The largest community of people using sidereal zodiac signs is, of course, the community of Indian or Vedic astrologers. Their initial reflex is often something to the effect of, quote, and this is our tradition. Who does this foreigner think he is? Some newbie claiming to be more important than all our own experts for hundreds of years, which is ridiculous. Because I am a newbie and I am a foreigner, and I'm not trying to give you my argument. I'm trying to say, this is what your books say. This is what your people said. Please allow me a moment to address this reaction. I request you, I don't like the way I wrote this, but I request you to temporarily forget that I, Victor Kara, I would rather get rid of that bullshit sounding legalese language, but I request you to temporarily forget that I exist at all. Let us instead consider who else besides me has declared that the zodiac, even the zodiac of India, is intrinsically tropical and not sidereal. So let's pretend that Victor Kara doesn't exist. Let's pretend. First, who is there anybody besides this weirdo and other similar crackheads and weirdos like him that thinks that the zodiac is supposed to be tropical? Well, first we have the Vedas themselves, the Shatapatha Brahmanas, etc., which use astrology to determine the correct time to perform important and sacred endeavors, yagya. Mostly they relied on 27 sidereal nakshatras, but whenever they utilized a 12-fold division, they did so in relation to solstice and equinox. And if you want to pursue evidence in that matter, look up Shatapatha Brahmana. And all the rituals that are for the year are based on the sun's position in relation to the solstices and equinoxes in that 12-fold system. So yeah, besides Victor Kara, is there anybody? Yeah, there's the Vedas, which is maybe important to Vedic astrology. I don't know. Next, we have the astronomical sections of the Puranas. What's a Purana? I don't know. It's the part of the Vedas that explains the Vedas to lay people. So maybe that's slightly important. I don't know. Next, we have the astronomical sections of the Puranas, along with the Indian astronomical and astrological classics like Surya Siddhanta and Brihat Parashara or Shastra. As shown above, these unequivocally and uniformly define the zodiac as a solstice equinox phenomenon, i.e. tropical. This being the case, we would expect at least several more contemporary Indian thinkers to question the adoption of the sidereal zodiac besides just this Italian dude with a temper. It's kind of unbelievable that it's just this crazy long-haired dude. If it's really there in the Vedas like this dude claims it is, then shouldn't there be more people? Well, maybe not, but guess what? Yes, there are many, many other people besides this weirdo. So I'll just tell you the ones that I know about. We don't know that much. The further back you go in history, the less you know. But you can look back to classical astrologers, two very important classical astrologers like Varaha Mihira, which is like the Einstein of Indian history, and Aryabhatta, which is like Einstein number 2. Classical astrologers such as Varaha Mihira and Aryabhatta spoke in favor of a tropical zodiac. Aryabhatta did so in the first statement of the 4th chapter of his book Aryabhatiya. Look it up if you want to. Varahamihira did so in Brihat Samhita 3:1-3 and Panchasiddhantika 3:21 and 32. Look it up if you want to, if you care. Where he noted that the solstices are the markers for the beginning of Cancer and Capricorn. And these drift through the nakshatras over time. But the tradition developing around him was ignoring this in favor of just keeping things the same, and he was just bringing this up and questioning whether that was a good thing to do. So is there anybody that maybe is not really on board with the sidereal zodiac? Yeah, maybe Varahamihira and Aryabhatta. But that's a very long time ago. It's hard to really, you can't like interview them or anything. Or, well, I mean, the statements are pretty clear. But in more recent history, we have more information available. So in the late 19th century, now what the hell is that? That's 18 something, right? So in like 1880s or something, there's a person's S.B. Dikshita. My daughter always laughs when I tell her this Indian name. In his book, he wrote a book called History of Indian Astronomy, Part 2. I think he might be slightly a scholar, since we still even know about him 200 years later. Or 100 and something years later. He concluded that the Indian calendar should be based on the tropical zodiac signs, not sidereal, because of the importance of the solstices and equinoxes in Vedic religion. Wow, so it's not just this weirdo Vic who said that the Vedic religion used the tropical zodiac for the yagyas? No, it's this guy S.B. Dikshit. Dikshit realized the unlikeliness. By the way, that name means very intelligent or educated. This person recognized the unlikeliness of conservative Indian culture adopting such a radical change. So it's not just some kind of a racist statement from an outsider to say that Indian culture is conservative. Indian people know that Indian culture is conservative. He recognized the unlikeliness of conservative Indian culture adopting such a radical change and suggested that a partial reform would be to standardize a singular sidereal zodiac on the Chitrapaksha Ayanamsha. So that's Mr. Dikshit. His opinion was echoed exactly by the official calendar reform committee led by N.C. Lahiri. This is now big time. If you don't know about Lahiri, you don't know Jack. Because it's even called the Lahiri Ayanamsha. So guess what, friends? Lahiri is in favor of a tropical zodiac. The guy who recommended the Lahiri Ayanamsha for the sidereal zodiac is in favor of a tropical zodiac. Maybe you probably never, ever read anything that he actually wrote. And that's why you don't know that. But not just him, but his whole committee, they just copied S.B. Dikshit's opinion. They were commissioned by the Indian government in 1950, shortly after independence, which was effort was to, India has very different regions which speak different languages and celebrate holidays on different days. So India made a kind of a ill-fated effort to unify, make a single Indian language, Hindi, and to make a single Indian calendar. And so in order to do that, they had this committee led by Lahiri. And Lahiri, the first and second resolution in the committee's official report was that the start of the year, and thus the zodiac, should be marked by the northerly equinox. So in other words, northerly equinox means where the sun goes north. So Makar Sankranti. So Makar Sankranti should be the beginning of the year, and it should be on the actual solstice when the sun actually goes north, Uttarayana. But they conceded that an Ayanamsha can be applied for religious purposes, quote, as a concession to the prevailing customs. Again, on page 7 of the report, when elaborating on standardization of the religious calendar, the committee wrote, this recommendation, the Chitrapaksha Ayanamsha, Chitrapaksha is the idea that Spika, or Spica, however you say it, can define where Aries starts. this recommendation is to be regarded only... Lahiri said this. This recommendation is to be regarded only as a measure of compromise, so we avoid a violent break with the established custom, but it does not make our present seasons in the various months as they were in the days of Varahamihira or Kalidas. It is hoped that at not a distant date, further reforms for locating the lunar and solar festivals in the seasons in which they were originally observed will be adopted. So Lahiri, his whole commission is just echoing Dikshit's opinion that the tropical zodiac is the zodiac. And the things that are based on the zodiac should be based on it. But you can't do that because everybody is too used to doing it the way that they've always been doing it. So let's not do that. So let's not make India go to a tropical zodiac, these Indian people were saying. But let's hope that in the future, somebody will. It is clear that the 7 extremely highly esteemed scientists and scholars commissioned by this committee agreed that the tropical zodiac was correct, but a sidereal zodiac would be required to accommodate the prevailing customs. Thus, they viewed the sidereal zodiac as a compromise with tradition. That's literally what they said. Then a little bit before this, in 1930, G.V. Krishnaswamy published a paper entitled Reform of the Indian Calendars, in which he said the method of placing the ayanas and the months on a sidereal basis in the Indian calendars is defective, and hence there is a difference of about 23 days in the calculations. G.V. Krishnaswamy, 1930. This is not a foreigner newbie, right? But he said that the method of placing the ayanas, ayana means solstice, the solstice markers, and the months, and thus the zodiac, placing it by sidereal is defective, and it makes things 23 points, 23 degrees, 23 days off. In more modern times, at least three scholars, Krishan Kaul, MKA Patrakam, and TV Shivaram, speak very openly against the sidereal zodiac. Also, it's not just Victor Kara, Ernst Wilhelm, and Ryan Kirkzak, these foreign-sounding names. It's also Krishan Kaul, MKA Patrakam, and TV Shivaraman. All of a sudden it sounds more believable. Why? Why does it all of a sudden sound more believable? Because you don't have the acumen to consider the actual information. You only have shallow vision to consider the mouth, which is speaking the information. But that being the case, you should be fairly impressed that it's not just this weird mouth that's giving you this information. In fact, there's some very, very, very respected mouths giving this information today in India to Indian people. Sri Swarupananda Saraswati Maharaj of Dwarka Mutt stands behind them, these three scholars, adding that the Dwarka Mutt has promoted the same idea for 120 years. Again, you say, but they're talking about a calendar. How staggering is the ignorance? The calendar is the astrology. The calendar is the practical It's like you saying, no, you're talking about a reading. I'm talking about astrology. It's the same exact thing as saying you're talking about a calendar, not astrology. The calendar is the implementation of the astrological content. Sri Jayendra Saraswati Swamigal of Kanchi Mutt also supports them, saying, quote, the time has come for this reform. Sri Gangadharendra Saraswati Swamiji of Sri Sundar Swarnavali Mutt also supports them, saying all must, quote, fall in line with the Sayana system. Sayana means tropical. What can we conclude from all this? simply, even if you want to embrace the don't believe the newbie foreigners reaction, you still must deal with the actual facts that indigenous Indians for dozens of centuries have been trying to challenge the popular sidereal tradition. Thus, the idea that Indian astrology should stop using the sidereal zodiac is in fact neither new nor foreign. Yeah. Pretty good stuff. So there's more stuff like that. And then there's all tons of videos. Tons of videos. Look at me. Young Vic, 2012, June 29th. That was the original one. My wife was holding an iPhone, filming me at a train station in the opening scene. And 2017 videos. Here's where the shit hit the fan. 2017. And then it broke out into this war in September of 2015. And here's all the war, the shots back and forth. All these videos. This is all out there for you if you want to know about this tropical zodiac. Then again, we revisited in 2018 because I gave a presentation at the UAC conference in Chicago. So this is like a rehearsal, you might say, of that presentation. And then this was the first time I realized we needed a refresher. 2018 and 2019 we got a few more. We had Richard Fiddler show up in 2019 finally. 2021, look at me, I'm so pissed off. I'm a madman. And then there's today, 2021. All right, friends. And let me just check on the slight chance that there's something that's not going to drive me crazy. Is Vedic interpretation based on heliocentric solar system? No astrology should be based on heliocentric. No astrology of anyone in any way classical is heliocentric. Modern scientists who are so full of themselves think that means that ancient people didn't have any idea of heliocentrism, which is also ridiculous. The sun is the center of the universe. It's the central anchor. That's why it represents the soul. That's why the glyph for the sun is a circle with a dot in the middle of it. We knew about the heliocentric point of view forever. But that's not the point of view that's relevant to people living on Earth. The point of view that's relevant to people living on Earth is a geocentric point of view. And if you think that geocentrism is right or wrong and heliocentrism is right or wrong, you're also uneducated. Heliocentrism is a point of view. Geocentrism is a point of view. If I stand on the Earth, then the sun moves around me. And if you think that it doesn't move around me, you have no idea what motion means. Motion means a change in the position of one object relative to another. And so if you tell me that it is incorrect that the sun moves around the Earth from the viewpoint of a person standing on the Earth, you don't know your science. But if you tell me that it's incorrect that the Earth moves around the sun, you also don't know your science. And if you can't see how both of them are true at the same time, then you don't know nothing. So anyway, no valid astrology, no non-postmodern apocalyptic astrology is done heliocentrically because astrology is about life on Earth, not life on the sun. What are you talking about me now? Why you got to talk about me so much? Mukund, I'm not sure if I get the crux of the discussion. I'm sure you didn't. So I wish that you would rewatch it until you get it. But let me answer your question. I have one question. How much difference is when considering tropical and sidereal? And if there is, why haven't the ancients noticed and modified? Because, boy, you don't know anything about this. So learn about it. And so hopefully my answer to your question will help you learn about it. The difference between a star and the equinox gradually changes over time. So 2,500 years ago, when people said, hey, we're going to start using the Zodiac because we can use it now. We have the tools. But we're going to use these star points to make it easier. So we always know X star is this many degrees from B. A is this many. Okay. Then Hipparchus said that star and the equinox point, it gradually moves. So 2,500 years ago, when they set up the thing, it was 0 degrees of difference. Hipparchus said, look, it's 15 years later and there's already 3 seconds of arc difference. So it changes at a very slow pace. And so currently, 2,000 years later, it's 23 degrees different. Why didn't the ancients notice it? The ancients noticed it. That's called Hipparchus. He's the one who's credited as having noticed it. And why didn't they do something about it? They did something about it. They said, let's use Ayanamsha to keep track of the distance between the Ayana and the part that's in the part, and its part, the star, that's in reference to. But then the Indian community said, yeah, let's use Ayanamsha for the Rashi too, because we like the way that our indigenous nakshatras overlap with our Navamshas and our Rashis. That's what I think. Anything else? Yes. Anything else? What's a bibliography, dear Wolf? Yeah, Prakriti. Dina Shama. I thought tropical system is for the seasons like spring, summer, fall. I wish you guys had one single question about anything that I said. Dina Shama says, I thought the tropical system is for the seasons like spring, summer, fall, winter, and sidereal is for the moon nakshatras. No. The seasons and the zodiac signs are siblings. The seasons are an artifact of the solstices and equinoxes, and so are the zodiac signs. Hence, they're siblings. But the two things are derived from the same parent. Seasons are derived from solstice and zodiac. So it's solstice and equinox. Ptolemy tried to explain astrology by saying that it has something to do with weather. That's because Ptolemy is a bad philosopher. So Ptolemy is trying to explain astrology as if the planets have an effect on human beings. Also, he's Greek. So he's a bad philosopher. So he thinks that gods control things. And so he's coming from that background and he's trying to explain that planets have some effect, but he's speaking to the beginning of the modern rational scientific world. So he's trying to explain the effect in a materialistic way. And he's trying to say it has an effect through the weather. See how it's colder during Capricorn and Aquarius. See how it's hotter in Leo. See. And the planets, they also have subtler weather. This is what he's trying to explain in Tetrabiblos, which is bunk. It's crap. It's garbage. But that's from that bunk is where you get the idea that the planets are exerting some kind of an effect upon you, which is some kind of in relation to weather and seasons and things. And that's how you get people getting confused. But I live in the southern hemisphere. But that's all garbage, just totally introduced. Actually speaking, the planets are just hands on a complicated clock. And that clock is driven by deeds or actions, karmas of living entities. And so the planets don't do anything or exert any influence on anybody. No more than the hour hand on a clock exerts any influence on you, except to tell you what time it is. I mean, the Greeks were okay, but they're okay, but compared to the Indian philosophers, no. Yeah, so Mumbo Jumbo says, you had me thinking I'll definitely think about using tropical. I thought it would, though it would mean a paradigm shift. So the thing is, it's not really my intention to get you to switch to using tropical. What I would really love you to do is to think about what is the zodiac. Avail yourself of all the information that's on this page, victorcara.com/tropical. Think about it. Because if you just try something else, it's not that much of a gain. But if you learn to think about things, then it's a huge gain for you. If you learn to evaluate things. And then also if you have conviction, once you think about something carefully, you get more conviction in it. And when you have conviction, then you can do the work required. If you don't have conviction for something, you won't do the work required. So like you noted, it's a paradigm shift. You're going to, because the sidereal zodiac and its use has forced us to change and modify and dilute and invent. Change the basic simple techniques, modify definitions, invent new concepts to make these positions accurate and make them work. When you try to just switch your chart over to tropical, you might be baffled. Because if you had a hard time, honestly speaking, and I don't know how condescending this is going to sound, but if you had a hard time realizing that the tropical zodiac is the zodiac and the sidereal zodiac is some kind of a mistake, if that was a hard thing for you to figure out, then it's going to be really hard to figure out way more complicated things. Because that is not even complicated. That is so basic. This is going to be really hard to figure out. Like, how do you evaluate a chart? So just switching your chart over to tropical and then seeing what it looks like, you might just be like, what the fuck is this? This is just like I just threw popcorn all over my room. Sorry for the cursing. I don't like to curse, but sometimes that old New Yorker comes out. Doesn't help that my kids are cursing all the time. So anyway, yeah, I encourage you to do that. Fine, cool if you adopt tropical, that's great. But I hope that you do so with the right intention and for the right reasons, with the right convictions. Otherwise, you'll probably just be like, it was just easier to stick with sidereal. It resonated with me more. Yeah, it resonates with you more because you spent 30 years thinking of yourself as a Pisces. Now all of a sudden you're an Aries? What the hell is that? People also always mention Ernst Willem, and then they'll be like, whoa, how come this chart is weird? don't forget that Ernst Willem does basically have the same. I and Ernst basically do have the same point of view, basically, which is that the zodiac signs are tropical and the nakshatras are sidereal, but we have a very different idea about sidereal Ainamsha. My idea of sidereal Ainamsha is fine, Lahiri, go. 1, 2, 3, go. His idea of Ainamsha is just as revolutionary as his idea of the zodiac. So here's an idea of Ainamsha, which is that it's not ecliptical, it's equatorial. So it's very different. So if you just go to Vault of the Heavens and you are looking at your nakshatras, you're going to be like, I thought they weren't supposed to change, but his stuff says it's changed. That's because he's also using a weird Ainamsha. So just be aware of that. How do I factor in nakshatras then? Because they have certain zodiac properties. They don't have zodiac properties. You thought they had zodiac properties because you were told they had zodiac properties. You were told Aries has Ashwini in it. That's why Ashwini is fast. Okay, Aries also has Bharani in it, and Bharani is slow. So honestly, this is why I wrote the book 27 Stars, 27 Gods. And this is why I translated the Taittiriya Brahmana's Nakshatra Sutra. Because that stuff perfectly explains the nakshatras with absolutely no reference to zodiac signs whatsoever. Ashwini is Ashwini because it belongs to the Ashwins. Bharani is Bharani because it belongs to Yama. That's why. Bharani has the qualities that Bharani has. Has nothing to do with Aries or whatever Navamshas are in it. And then if you're asking, like, practically how do you use them, it's just, you don't really, like, look at what, honestly, sorry for that letdown, but you know that section that we just looked at from Brihad Parashara or Hora Shastra, the next thing he says, he goes through this whole trouble of saying, look at the sky, you see all those lights? Some of them are nakshatras, some of them are planets. And then there's also this thing called Rashi. Well, after he says that, you know the next thing he says? He says, forget about the nakshatras. If you want to know about nakshatras, just go read some other books. That's literally what he says. And then he says, what we care about is how the signs rise and how the planets move in the signs. That's literally what the Parashara Hora Shastra says right after that section in the third chapter. And then he says, okay, so let's start with the planets. Let me explain to you what the planets symbolize. So when they adopted, as I mentioned, when I was going through the history before, around 2,500 years ago, when zodiacal astrology exploded on the scene as something technologically feasible, it also came, and as much as I am an Indocentric person, on this point, it can't be argued that this explosion, this advance in technology which caused the tropical zodiac to become feasible, didn't come from India. I think it was Mesopotamians, Persians, I forget exactly who. It was somebody else. And then it came into India quickly. And so when the Indians import this system, they also are importing other incidentals of the system, which is that previously in India, astrology was not used predictively. Outside of omens, like I said before, oh, my right eye is twitching. That was a very Indian way of doing predictions. Or they would even do that with planets. They would say, oh no, Saturn is by the red star. But this house and sign thing, it's not of Indian origin. So also, they didn't care. The native Indian astrology didn't care about predicting your future. They had faith that your future is created by your current actions. They're not obsessed with the prediction of their future. Some people have also argued that because India was so rich in natural resources, they didn't care about the future. Whereas compared to the desert from which natal astrology came from, they care a lot about your tomorrow because they don't want to know if you have enough to eat. Indian astrology is mostly used proactively for when is the best time to do something, to make a choice, to do something that I want to do. That's how it natively was done in India. But when they adopted the Zodiac, I don't know, I got lost. I don't really know why I was addressing this point, but they adopted the interpretive, they adopted the interpretations of the system. Like, for example, if you live in India and all of a sudden a guitar comes in, it's not a sitar, it's a guitar. So what do you do with guitars? Well, I don't know, they play rock and roll with it or they play jazz with it. So when the guitar comes into the culture, then also the rock and roll and the jazz comes into the culture. Similarly, when this 12 sign astrology came into India as something that we can do in great detail with the technology, it was previously in India already in Shatapatha Brahmana in terms of the way that they would use it. It was when is the best time to do something. When it came into India, it also came in along with the things that it was used for. And hence Jatika was born in India. I'm going out on a limb a little bit because people would predict the future of certain people in ancient India. Like Parikshit, the king, would have his future predicted, but it wasn't a widespread thing. But now I remember the reason why I got off on this tangent is somebody was asking about how you use nakshatras. You kind of don't. Or if you do, you're in uncharted waters, and you're developing a new system. You're developing a new science. They really didn't. That's what I'm saying. In Parashara Hora Shastra, he says, there's nakshatras, there's planets, there's rashis. Who cares about the nakshatras? Find out about them somewhere else. We care about how the planets move through the rashis and how the rashi rises. That's literally what he said. You can read it in chapter 3. And that's the attitude. They kind of threw out the nakshatras because they were used for something else. The nakshatras were used for timing events and ceremonies and so forth. So how do you use nakshatras if you want to use them in the natal setting? Well, I don't know. Then we don't have the benefit of classical literature. There's no chapter. I heard there might be a chapter somewhere. I have to look it up. But there's, for example, no chapter in Parashara Hora Shastra which says if Mercury is in Ashwini, then this is the interpretation. If Mercury is in Bharani, then this is the interpretation. If Bharani is in the third house, there's none of that. So you have to figure it out yourself and develop it. Thank you, Yash. Whew, getting tired. Anything else? Where can you make a chart as per my definition from my site? But that's like an ordered chart. If you don't want to pay money or something to get it ordered, then victorcara.com, and then you can go to readings. But if you don't want to do that, then just set your software for Sayana, right? Set your software for tropical, whole sign, and then you'll get your basic chakra, your Janma chakra, right? You'll get your basic chart, and then reset it to Lahiri, and then write down and take note of your nakshatras. Or get yourself a software that can do both at the same time. As far as I'm aware, there's a software called Bindu. Of course, there's a software called Kala. And as far as I'm aware, Hora will allow you to do that with the right settings. And there's a software called Ephemeris, which is Western software. That, however, allows you to put Vedic sidereal nakshatras in there as well. All right, so as you can probably tell, I am fatigued. So I shall retire. Thank you all for your participation.